Ahoy folks, and welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So, it is the weekend, and I promised there'd be builds over the weekend, so here is the first one. This is another Hive Scum build. I'm determined to make this work, and it's feeling better now. It's feeling a lot better. I did just find out I've actually done more missions on the Hive Scum than I did on the Arbites, which I'm not quite sure how I've managed that, but I have. That's weird. So let's jump in and take a look at what we're using. So, obviously, it's a new build, so we have to have a new costume. It's just how Darktide works, obviously. You know, Fashion Tide and all that. We're still using the shivs, because I quite like the shivs. They're incredibly fast. They're not as clunky as the old combat knives. They're actually quite good at just blending hordes. So as you can see here, the modifiers are as such: damage, finesse, first target, and penetration. Lol. All at 80, and mobility is our dump stat. Perk-wise, we're going with crit and carapace. And for the blessings, we are going for uncanny strikes and precognition. So uncanny strikes is going to give us lots and lots of rending, and precognition is going to give us that delightful crit damage and attack speed, because finesse is like crazy, crazy good. So why are we putting crit on it? We're putting crit on it because we want lots and lots of crit in this build, because we are going to be taking advantage of coated weaponry. Melee critical strikes infect enemies with one stack of toxin. The more crit we have, for example, over here, that is going to give us the ability to basically use the shivs as a poop knife, which is kind of what we want. We want to be able to spread around those toxins and basically take advantage of as much of this side of the tree as we can. And I can hear you saying, Zug, you beautiful bastard, why are we just not using the poop knife? Because the shivs kind of outperform the poop knife at the moment. Poop knife is very, very good. But it kind of lacks a bit in the speed department, and it does tend to bounce off of very, very heavily armored targets. But heavily armored targets are always going to be the crux of this build. They're always going to be difficult for the Hive Scum to deal with, but we have ways around that. They're just not quite as simple as, say, if you're on the Arbites, things in Carapace basically mean nothing to you. You can just wade through whatever the hell is in front of you. We can't do that on the Hive Scum. Well, we can to a point, but things. Anyway, the secondary weapon, we are going to be using the needle pistol. Modifiers are as such: damage, ammo, stability, and stopping power, and a dump is mobility. You can dump out stability if you really want to. This is a very accurate weapon. We don't particularly need stability. I just hate mobility in all of its iterations, so that's why I'm dumping it. Perk-wise, we're going with unyielding and crit again, just to have lots of crit on the build. It always helps, and crit does actually slightly increase the tox damage that it does, or at least from testing and a few other people saying that they've tested it as well, it does seem crit kind of slightly increases the tox damage. And apparently it also increases the tox damage dependent on where you hit the target. Most of the time it doesn't matter. Like, more or less every single enemy, one good body shot from the needle pistol, and the tox will take care of it. It's only things like monstrosities, demon hosts, bosses. Then if you can weak spot them with the needle pistol, your tox will go further. But most of the time, it doesn't matter. So, but, you know, it's something you can do. Blessings-wise, we're going with Ghost for immune to range attacks for 1.5 seconds on a weak spot hit. God damn, I really shouldn't record these things at midnight. Anyway, that's my poor planning. Desperado for 20% critical chance on a successful dodge. 6 seconds. I mean, who doesn't like crit? Next up, we have the Curos. Right, we have 2 twinned Curos, which are toughness with extra toughness, combat ability regeneration, and damage resistance gunners. You can dump out the combat ability regeneration for whatever the hell you want. You could add health. You could add corruption resistant if you're doing lots and lots of havoc. You could have stamina regeneration. It doesn't matter. I have combat ability regeneration just so that we can use our combat ability more. So these 2 are twinned. And then for the third one, you have a couple of options. At the moment, I am using a increased to max stamina curio, with toughness, stamina regeneration, and damage resistance gunners. Now, if you do not want a max stamina curio, you can switch this out to a max health curio to basically help cushion. Because, as I keep saying, toughness doesn't work as an overshield. Toughness does let damage bleed through. So, whatever you do, if you take a hit, a small amount of that damage is going to bleed through to your health. So, having a health curio is going to help cushion that just a little bit more. It's not entirely necessary, but it is helpful, especially if you're not super confident on the Hive Scum yet. I would highly suggest having a plus health curio as your third. But again, you could have a toughness if you wanted to as well. I mean, it's up to you. Like I keep saying, I'm not your mum. I'm not going to put little notes in your lunchbox. Do what you want to do. So that is the gear. Let's jump into the talents. So it's pretty simple and usual up the top here. We're going with a Tertiary Welcome for 15% melee damage on first enemy hit with each attack. We're going with Precision Violence, melee hits, replenish toughness, melee critical strike, repoint, blah, 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 more and more and more. 4, 8, 12. Float like a butterfly, perfect blocks, the successful dodges grant 20% critical strike chance. We don't care about perfect blocks because we're not going to be using them very often. It's the dodge chance we want. Next up, we've got Burst of Energy. Gain stun immunity for 6 seconds and restore 50% toughness when toughness is broken. 10-second cooldowns. This is wildly good. Into plus 25% toughness. And now this is where we can change things. So, I'm a big fan of the Chem Grenade. So it's usually what I stick with. But if you are having trouble with packs of Crushers, Maulers, Ragers, and all that, the Boombringer is a very solid choice these days. They have buffed it, so it is not just a big pile of crap. And it isn't as awkward to wield. It's like, Boombringer. Things are running towards you. You can either do one of two things. You can aim at them and fire. And kill everything in a quite generous AoE around them. Or if they are bearing down on you, you can just fire at their feet. And that is a good way to try and get as many targets as you can. Like so. And with this build, you do get 4 charges of the old Boombringer. So, if that is what you want to go for, that is an entirely good choice. Also, it has no drop-off. I don't know if that is because they've broken something, or I mean, it's just, or maybe that's how it's meant to work. But if you can see the target, you can shoot the target. There is no drop off. There is no maximum range or minimum range. So yeah, there you go. But you can also use the Blackout Grenade. Slightly less useful than the other two, but it is a grenade that you don't have to worry about picking up because you regenerate them every 20 kills. Now, I will give you a little trick you can do with the Blackout Grenade, which is, if you really want to take it, what you can do is you can take a point from somewhere, it doesn't matter where, maybe something that isn't going to be super, important to the build. You could take out Toxic Renewal, which will reduce your survivability, put it into Pocket Toxin. Now your Blackout Grenade is now a tiny Chem grenade, as you can see. And then it basically coats everyone in lovely, lovely tox. Is it as good as the Chem Grenade? No. But does it regenerate? Yes. I mean, what you can do if you really want to, you can. What the hell have I done? Oh yeah, Pocket Toxin. Took it out of there. I would suggest not taking it out of that. I would take it out of extra pouches. Because if you're going to take the Blackout Grenade, you don't need the extra grenade. So just switch it like that. Okay? So switch the point from here to Pocket Toxin if you're going to take the Blackout Grenade. And that is a very good way of getting very cheap Chem Grenades that will regenerate. Anyway, next up we've got Gang Tough for 10% damage and toughness damage reduction. Going into Nimble for dodges are extended by 25% and time considered dodging is increased by 50%. We are missing out on Slippery Customer. It is very good, but it's also very situational. So we're dumping it for now. it hasn't made much difference to the build. Tis but a scratch, replenish 30% toughness over 3 seconds after taking range toughness damage. Losing all toughness cancels the effect. And then we're taking Anarchist, which is going to give us 5% crit. And then we're going down into toughness boost, and we're taking Rampage. Replenish all toughness and enter Rampage for 10 seconds for the duration and gain 50 melee power, 20% melee attack speed, and 25% damage reduction, as well as becoming stun and suppression immune. Melee strikes extend the duration by 0.3 seconds. After 20 seconds, extending becomes diminished upon exiting Rampage, lose all stamina, blah, blah, blah. You get a bit screwed up for 7 seconds. Doesn't matter, just keep killing. Then we're going into Boiling Blood. Melee strikes against elites and monstrosities extend the duration of Rampage by 1 second. Additionally, the time before extending becomes diminished is now 30 seconds. And then we're taking Pulverizing Strikes, which gives us plus 50% cleave, which isn't wildly impressive, but it's the additional buff we want, which is gain 2.5% melee power for every second spent with the ability active up to 10 times. Which is also why we're not taking Challenging Aggression, because it gives us 25% rending, but it's only while we're above 50%. So it's not super great. If it was for the entire duration, it might be worth taking it, but no. That is a point that is better spent elsewhere. We are losing Forge's Bellow, which is, it's a very good ability. It's a good way of keeping yourself alive. But we are very, very against the knuckle for points on this build. So, let's go over to the left first. We're taking the crit boost. We're going down into Swift Endurance, which is increasing melee attack speed for each current stamina. Also, while we're taking the stamina trinket. And then we're grabbing the Sweet Spot for plus 25% weak spot damage. Now, we're not taking hypercritical because it tends to get upset with hyperviolence. They haven't fixed the interaction yet, so that's why we haven't taken it. Let's go over here onto the right. We are taking 10% Toxin Strength into Coated Weaponry, which melee critical strikes infect enemies with 1 stack of Chem Toxin. Then we're taking Toxin Mania, plus 5% base damage for each enemy Chem Toxin infected enemy up to 15%. Toxin Renewal, replenish 15% toughness when an enemy infected with Chem Toxin is killed by a melee attack. And also extra pouches for 1 Blitz charge, which will be Chem Grenades. And then into Sample Collector, kills replenish 1% of your cartel special. Cooldown, killing Chem Toxin infected enemies increases 2%. It's very late, leave me alone. And then into the middle for 10% melee damage, into Punching Above One's Weight, 15% damage against elites and monstrosities, into Hyper Violence. Kills grant plus 25% of the difference between the damage dealt by your attack and the health of the killed enemy as melee damage for 1 second. It's a very confusingly worded talent, but it is quite good. And then we've got Hive City Brawler, up to 20% damage reduction depending on available stamina, partly while we're also taking the Stamina Curio. Additionally, up to 20% melee damage depending on spent stamina. So it's good having more and less. And then we're taking Adrenaline Frenzy. Melee hits grant you a stack of adrenaline. Critical hits grant plus 1 additional stack. Not gaining a stack within 2 seconds will remove a stack instead. At 30 stacks, remove all stacks. Oh my god, how many times I'm going to have to say stacks? Of adrenaline again, Adrenaline Frenzy. Adrenaline Frenzy grants 10% attack speed, 25% melee damage, lasting 10 seconds. And then increase the duration of Adrenaline Frenzy to 20 seconds, which is just a big old boost. And Adrenaline Unbound. While Adrenaline Frenzy is active, you replenish 5% toughness each second. Now, we're not taking these 3 because they are utterly pointless and make this 100% worse. Killing Blows now grant 4 additional stacks of adrenaline. Elite Killing Blows grant 10. Non-Killing Blows grant none. It's just not as good. It just makes things a lot more awkward with it. Weak Spot hits now grant 2. Regular melee hits grant none. So it's generally just making things more awkward for you for no reason. And the increased to 4 seconds on this makes barely any difference. So there you go. It is slightly, but I think Adrenaline Frenzy does beat out chemical dependency. I mean, you get 15% crit and some toughness damage reduction. Whereas with this, you get attack speed, more damage. You do end up doing a lot more damage with this. But it does also allow us to mess around with the Cartel Stim. Or the Cartel Special, sorry. I highly suggest going with Wildfire all the way to the end over here for Fury 2. And coming down here and grabbing some attack speed. I would not go all the way to the end because that will pump this thing up to crazy levels. As you can see. And 75 seconds is just way too long. It is a very unpleasant length of time. Even at 63, it feels a bit... So, but, you know, feel free to fiddle about as much as you want. If you're doing prestige things for it, which I've already done, it's incredibly annoying. Generally, just go for one thing for each prestige achievement. Don't try and do them all at once with it, because it would just be an absolute nightmare. But there you go, folks. That is another Adrenaline Frenzy Rampage build for you that leans heavily on Tox. If you've enjoyed, please do like and subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. It really does help us out. And I shall see you all for the next one. So until then, take it easy. I shall see you later.